And thank you for joining this podcast. I'm joined in the studio by Mr. Simon Mallin from Simon Mallin Canine Training and Consultancy. Simon, I understand you're part of an exciting project in Zimbabwe that involves tackling the country's problem with poaching, and you've developed a training course for people who want to learn how to become a qualified dog handler with the speciality of tracking.
That's right, Gaz. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me this evening.
You're most welcome. Simon, this project sounds really cool. Can you tell me, how did you get involved in the project?
A little bit of a story there. So I connected with a gentleman called Peter Magoo from the Anti-Poaching Canine Foundation in Zimbabwe. Peter and I actually worked together some 20 years ago in Baghdad Airport, where I was actually managing the checkpoint coming into the airport, and Peter was one of the explosive search dog handlers working there. We briefly worked together then. I've been involved with security dog handling and as a dog handler in the military originally, tracking being where I started my dog career really. And I've worked all over the world since, and in the UK, lots of different things. So yeah, Peter and I have been chatting for a while via LinkedIn initially. And I wasn't aware that Peter had set up a anti-poaching canine unit in Zimbabwe. So we got chatting. They needed some help and support, mostly with funds and training and equipment. And I offered my services. So I went out there in September of this year, and just for a look-see at my own expense. And Peter had arranged for me to stay with one of his clients, which is actually in Sebakwe. I don't pronounce this right every time, but something like Sebakwe, Mahamara. I'm sure I will get criticised on my pronunciations, but it's something like that, which is sort of south of Harare, which is the capital, which is a good sort of 6-hour drive from the airport. Not all of it solid roads, as we know here. I'd say about 50% of it was dirt roads. So that was quite an interesting drive. Yeah, so that's the initial bit. That's how I sort of got out there, and how I made contact with Peter. And then I sort of spent 2 weeks out in the bush, literally, although staying in I'd call it a farm, but they call it a homestead, which was owned and run and managed by a gentleman called Sean Waller, who I believe you're going to be interviewing as well at some point.
Yes.
I spent some time doing training with the dog handlers there, going out on patrol with the scouts, the rangers. So I really, really got involved and immersed into it. And whilst I was there, I was trying to come up with ideas, fundraising campaigns that I am doing anyway, which is a walk for a coastal walk from south to North Wales with a pal. Which has taken us 2 years to get to Tenby. On and off, not in one go, but we were doing it anyway. But we sort of linked that to fundraising campaigns. We got a GoFundMe sort of project going with that, and that's to help Peter with funds for equipment mostly. So that's it in a nutshell. I suppose the key point of this is, whilst I was there, we were operating out of a former hunting lodge that had been kept in mothballs, not used, kept safe, kept clean. But I was told, sadly, that a couple that had been caretaking it for 15 years had only recently passed away. So they basically kept it really well. And yeah, they're not going to get to see it being turned around. So whilst I was there, I just couldn't help but think that this former hunting lodge was an absolute waste, because it's not being used. My mind started doing overtime, and I thought, well, probably the way the situation is there at the moment, meaning there's not a lot of wildlife for people to see. It's there, but you've got to go and look for it. It wouldn't attract normal tourists. And I suppose it's a little bit isolated. It wouldn't be everyone's cup of tea. So I thought, well, how can I get people here? And I thought, well, I can approach my sort of world, if you like, which is dog handling.
Yeah.
And hopefully attract initially dog handlers, although I've sort of changed my mind a little bit with it. They don't have to be dog handlers. Mm-hmm. Anyone's got an interest, but sort of running a tracker dog handler course using Peter's dogs, so the dogs are trained, using the scouts as advisors and trainers in their own rights, and visual tracking and all that side of things, and how to live in the bush and animal, wildlife recognition and conservation and the whole bigger picture of how, education and involving a local community can, help the fight against poaching. I don't know if fight's the right word, but education even.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. I might be totally off my rocker. It's the key to this is getting the first group of people there, and we'll make it work. And then I'm really confident that it's just going to snowball.
That sounds fantastic, Simon. Now, Simon, let me ask you, you've got a lot of experience in dog handling professionally, as you just said about your work in Iraq. And some years ago, you took that experience and developed courses for people new to working with dogs, as well as upskilling existing dog handlers. With using dogs for tracking poachers in Zimbabwe, what's the benefit of doing that? Isn't there an easier or a better way to track these poachers?
There's visual tracking and technology, I guess. I'm a dog man, so I'm biased. A dog's only as good as its training, mm-hmm. and it's only as good as the handler handling it. And the handler's only as good as the trainer that's trained them.
Yeah.
So they're not infallible. The training needs to be maintained constantly as well. So it's not a job for somebody who's not committed, if you like. The visual deterrent of dogs alone. So what I'm hearing from the area there is, in the short time that they've been using dogs, which, as I understand, is only 6 months, it made a massive difference to poaching in general, meaning in that immediate area, meaning poachers will look for an easier target. It's just the thought of the dogs being there. A properly trained dog will track somebody to their front door. So I did some time out in Kenya, training. I supplied dogs there and trained the dogs and rangers in handling tracking dogs, and we use the term, which isn't, I didn't make this up, it's been out there, you can run but you can't hide. Meaning we might not be behind you immediately, but we'll get to you, and literally somebody will get a knock on the door.
Absolutely. And I think in this digital world that we live in, we understand, certainly here in Britain, that if you want to find somebody or some kind of activity that they're doing, there's a digital footprint. But if somebody doesn't want to be found, or if somebody is off the grid, shall we say, it's a lot harder to find them. And that's the benefit of having dogs, is they don't have batteries. Yes, they need to be cared for, but they're not reliant on a Wi-Fi signal or a mobile phone signal. The poachers aren't leaving a digital footprint when they're out in the field. And that's where the dogs come into their own. We're not talking about a very technical world here. We're talking about people who don't want to be found. They're doing this under the radar. And that's why the modern technology, I think, maybe isn't best suited for that kind of environment. Dogs are tried and tested, and it's something that works very well. But I take on board what you're saying about having the right kind of training. Certainly in all fields, if the training isn't up to spec, then the handler's only going to be as good as their training, and ditto the dog. I guess...
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry to interrupt you there, but
It's okay.
poachers, they know what they're doing as well. If they've got if they know dogs are being used, then they'll use tactics to avoid or to try and prevent the dog or lose the dog from tracking them. So again, I won't talk about that one here for obvious reasons, but on the course, that's the sort of stuff we'll be covering as well.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. I guess the skills learnt in tracking are also transferable to other fields beyond poaching. Where else outside of Zimbabwe, and what other purposes could the training be of use to somebody who attended your course?
That's a really good question. Obviously, I'm based in the UK. I'll be totally honest. Within the private security sector, which is the world I'm from, the opportunity to use a tracking dog would be very limited. It's something that the police would provide that service for tracking criminals, or possibly even a lost person. And then we have in the UK various charities, volunteers that provide search and rescue services. So they'd be unpaid volunteers who give up their time. They'd have their own dog, their own vehicle, and provide a tracking service to the organisation they work for. So the skills that we're going to teach tracking out to answer your question, out in the Zimbabwe bush, will have an anti-poaching spin on it for sure. It must do. However, tracking is tracking, albeit we won't be tracking in urban areas because we're not in an urban environment. It'll be a rural sort of bush environment. But still, tracking is tracking. The qualification that I'm developing and writing at the minute is actually based on the NASDU, which is the National Association of Security Dog Users Tracking and Trailing qualification, which is for search and rescue. Because I'm delivering it overseas, it'll be an overseas endorsed training program, but the learning outcomes will be identical and more. Yeah. So what I'm saying is basically those skills would be transferable. So when somebody got back to the UK, should they wish to take that direction, on a volunteer based with search and rescue, then they've definitely got a fantastic base there for sure, and certification, and it's on their CV. Equally, it would work very well for somebody who's already possibly a handler in another discipline, who wants a different skill base, CPD, continuous professional development, if you're in the sort of dog world that I'm in. If you were an aspiring handler that wants to deliver training, because NASDU has tracking qualifications, as I said, it could be a route towards that. Equally, I might be going off piste a little bit here, but while I'm on a roll, we're only taking for actual learners, which is not a lot, and for companions, if people wish a companion to come with them. I say companion, it could be a partner, it could be a friend, but there's only 4 people on the actual course, and there's me as a UK NASDU instructor to sort of continuity of that qualification, if you like. There's Peter, who's from Zimbabwe, who's got plenty of background and expertise, so he'll be assisting. We've got Ashton, who's an expert on wildlife and conservation. He'll be assisting. We've got Petrus, who's a scout, who's a visual tracker, very interesting gentleman. He'll be involved. So what I'm saying is there's plenty of time to tailor each individual person's requirement. There'll be a core skills element to the course that everybody would go through, such as selection of dogs, selection of handlers, initial training, so I'm not just sort of throwing people in the deep end. They'll have a good understanding of how we go about training these dogs. Although we're using trained dogs, they'll have an understanding of how these dogs are trained initially and how to carry out continuation training. Equally, if somebody just wanted to come along as, let's say, I was chatting to somebody only yesterday who's from the sort of pet dog agility sports world, which isn't my world. But the lady said, could I come? And she thought she couldn't. And I said, yeah, of course you can. As long as you've got an aptitude towards dogs, because it's, if this was in the UK, you'd need and it's the security industry, you'd need an SIA license, Security Industry Authority license. There's no requirement for that, particularly as it's an overseas endorsed training program. It's just having I need people that are reasonably fit. When I say reasonably fit, I couldn't go and do a 5-mile run, but I can certainly do a 2-mile track, which is what we're sort of looking at. You're not running, it's a reasonably steady pace, sort of a fast walk, if you like. A lot of the times you stop and start it, but you are going to be out in the African bush, which everything comes with that. So yeah, that it doesn't have to be a professional dog handler, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Well, I think there's many points there that make this training very unique and really quite beneficial. Actually, being in the field in an environment which is quite different from what we see here in the UK, to have that on your CV, it stands out, and it's the environment that's key here. To achieve the best of training, you've got to really put yourself in an environment that is realistic for that training, and that makes the training all the more realistic. And
absolutely,
certainly there in Zimbabwe, you don't get more realistic than being, as you say, in the bush. All this sounds fantastic, Simon. So let me understand this a little bit better. You said the course is open to anyone, right? Is that any person who has the right interests, anyone from across the globe, perhaps?
So we've got interested people that have contacted me from New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and Japan, outside of the UK. If anything, I'd say the majority of inquiries are coming from outside of the UK, which I wasn't expecting. And a lot of these people have an interest in dog training or handling, and just wish to add to their skill base and further their own knowledge, and train with different people, if you like.
That sounds absolutely amazing. So potential for global attendees, or attendees to come from all over the world. And so I guess they'll be flying into the capital, which is Harare. How will they get from the airport to the training site and back?
Okay, so we've arranged for transport. So everyone will be met at the airport. So day one of this first course is May 4th, which is a Saturday. So people need to arrange their own flights. We'll request that everybody should get to Harare by midday-ish on May 4th. And that will be our meeting point at the airport. We'll collect together, and then we'll go down. We'll drive as one unit then to Sebakwe in Mahamara. I'm not saying that right, I know. Which is, when I did it, we got a flat tire on the way, so it doesn't really count. Okay. It took us 7 hours. So it's a fair old drive. We did stop midway to get some food. Yeah, so it was a good 7-hour drive. So if people wanted to, because it's not large numbers, it's easy coordinated. We've got, so Peter actually from the Anti-Poaching Canine Federation Trust, he's well versed to pickups and drop-offs at the airport. So him and his team will be arranging for people to be picked up and met. If somebody wanted to arrive the night before, on the Friday, or even a few days before, that's absolutely fine. And I will arrange for a small additional cost, if you like, for Peter and his team to meet them at the airport and take them to the hotel or wherever. And then we'd get them picked up from there so we can all go in one hit onto Sebakwe.
Yeah. This sounds like
and back.
And back again. Well, that's the important part.
We will promise to bring them back. Yes, we won't just leave them there.
Well, by the sounds of it, I mean, who'd wants to be coming back? Because it's actually sounding like quite an adventure. And anyone who's ever been to Africa, there's a certain magic in Africa which it captures you and it sort of stays in your heart for the rest of your life. And many people have said that. But I think one thing that the listeners might be wondering about, you mentioned this bush camp and the candidates will be living in a bush camp. Now, for me, that portrays a certain image. Is it all fire pits and sleeping under the stars? And is that kind of what we're doing in a bush camp there?
No, it's how can I describe it? So they're built, they're lodges. There's 4 large lodges, which will be for the customers. I say large, they're almost, there's room to do things with them that we probably will at a later date. It's a thatched lodge with a nice veranda on the front of it. In that lodge is a large, I keep saying large because they're huge, a large living room area, a bedroom and a bathroom. And in the bathroom is a bath, shower, sink, toilet, all the usual stuff. I mean, it all needs... We've got electricians going in, checking all the electrics. They haven't been turned on for 15 years. Wow. That's being done as we speak. Water, so it's all being connected. Water's a little bit of a problem, but we're on it. The electricity will be via generator. Heating is old-fashioned wooden burners, but like an industrial size that heats the water, so it's hot water for showers and things like that. What I would say is the only bit people really need to be prepared for is you can't be running. You can charge your phone. There wouldn't be a TV there, that sort of thing. But who wants a TV? When you're in an environment like that.
Well, there's nothing ever on the TV here in the UK with 300 channels.
No. I mean, I was there for over 2 weeks, not living in that particular place. I was about 20 minutes drive from there, quite isolated. And electricity would go off occasionally, but I didn't watch TV the whole time I was there. There was a TV there, but I didn't want to. I'd sit on the veranda and just look at the view. I suppose the bit that people need to be prepared for is the internet signal is hit and miss. So what we would do for people, and what I did, you buy a local SIM card, which is a couple of dollars, and then you buy credit, which we can arrange. It'll all be in hand. People will need to bring some cash with them. Zimbabwe is very much a cash world. They very rarely use cards and that sort of stuff. And US dollars is the main currency there and the preferred currency to buy things like, credit for your phone and that sort of stuff. We are isolated, but, things can be got if they're needed. Yeah. But you sort of, if you wanted to live stream something on your phone, forget it. You can send a WhatsApp message or you can record. What I was doing was sending a recorded message. I'd send it, and then it would send when I was moving around in the right signal, and it would send, and people back home would get it. So if you do need to be in contact with somebody back home on a very sort of regular basis, or if you needed to get home quickly, maybe this isn't for you, because that side of it is a little restricted.
But I understand some of the resources that you'll have with you in the field are pretty much 21st century. So you'll have with you satellite communications. So in an emergency, if somebody needed to reach one of the candidates, they can do. In an emergency, phone calls can be placed from there. So although people might be cut off with their latest iPhone, for example, actually there's a lot of contingency on the back end that's in place to ensure that everyone's safe. And we were talking the other day about some of the medical provision that you'll have there. You have a qualified medic with you who has the latest up-to-date medical equipment, things like a defibrillator and such. And although you really are in the bush, but you're actually very well prepared to deal with absolutely any situation that arises. Now, you and I have both spent time in Africa, and when you're there, it is indeed certainly different from the Western world, but it's actually different in a good way, I found, certainly. And there's a certain amount of peace that comes with being in the bush. So it sounds like a great adventure, but even though you're in the bush, you've got electricity, you've got water, drinking water primarily, and then some water then for washing. What about doing the laundry, Simon? I like to put the washing machine on every other day. Can the candidates wash their clothes out in the bush camp?
Yes, we will take them to a river on a daily basis, and we have a large rock that they can. No, I'm only joking. So, no, it's a question that I've raised. So, even though I'm sort of painting it as it is a bush camp experience, and I don't want people to sort of turn up and thinking it's 5-star. It's more than comfortable. It's not. Get me out of here on a celebrity type setup. We will be giving them tasks to do on a daily basis. Well, that might be fun. There's one of the buildings that I forgot to mention, which is my favourite building, is a large thatch building. That's where would have been the restaurant, which will be our dining area and classroom, and then a bar. Which is a beautiful feature with a huge open fireplace in there. So if it's cold in the evenings, we'll certainly get that lit. The bar will be stocked, not with every and sundry, but it's not a dry event. If people want to have a couple of beers of an evening, that's absolutely fine. So it'll be stocked with beer. If anyone wants anything a bit more fancy, bring it with you. It'll be an honesty type bar scenario to help yourself sign a book and then sort of pay for it at the end. The food, so the gentleman who's going to be cooking for us is a gentleman called Tendai, who cooked for me for 2 weeks. I was amazed, to be honest, considering where we were. So it'll be a English or British traditional fried grilled breakfast if people want it. I doubt we're going to have a selection of yogurts and all the fancy stuff. There'll definitely be fruit. If people have certain food sort of limitations, what they can or can't eat, dislikes and likes or allergies, we'll work with that. Or if you're vegetarian, we'll work with that. The Zimbabweans are very much into their meat. But, we'll work around it. We've already discussed this. So Tendo's going to be doing all the food. So it'll be and what we're planning and what we've agreed is a hearty breakfast, a light lunch. And the reason for that, some of the times we'll be out in the field, so we'll take food with us, and then a substantial sort of evening meal. And the way I can describe this food is traditional home-cooked food. I felt really well on it, and you can't nip out to Greg's and get a pasty. I ate very little bread, and what bread I did eat was cooked or made by Tendai. It's healthy eating, is the only way I can describe it. All the sauces and things were there if you want it. So yeah, it's traditional home cooking, I guess.
Yeah. That.
Oh, you asked about the laundry. I forgot. So your laundry will be done, and it'll be managed by Tendai and his team, but it will be washed by hand. Okay, so my clothes are washed by hand. You won't be bringing anything delicate with you. It'll be all outdoors sort of clothing, because when things are washed by hand, it's not always as delicate as it should be, but it's clean. And that's basically how it's going to work.
That sounds really good. Simon, all of this actually sounds quite idyllic to me, but I think one of the questions that people may have, especially if they haven't ventured very far from their home country, is it safe? Is it safe here in the bush camp?
Yeah, I mean, I asked the same question in my head before I went out there. And I did some research, and the people that were hosting me, it's perfectly safe. I mean, we're obviously in the bush, and we need to take that into consideration with wildlife, etc. From a security perspective, we've got Sean's outfit, which is a Sebakwe Anti-Poaching Conservation Group. They're being pulled in to secure the camp. I don't feel there's a massive need for that, but, just to make people feel at ease. And, we wildlife wandering in, that needs to be managed as well. It is fenced. That would be my answer to it. It felt very safe to me. I've been there, I've seen it with my own eyes. The people themselves are lovely. They've got a lot of questions about our way of life, and they're quite happy to answer, questions on their way of life. It's a great experience from that point of view as well.
That's fantastic. Now, Simon, you said that a candidate can bring a companion to the lodge. If they were to bring a significant other or a friend with them, what would that person be doing all day?
Cooking and cleaning. That person, so I'm just painting the picture. So a companion or a partner or husband, wife, if they're not on the course, they're very welcome to shadow the course. So they can sit in on the lessons, they can observe the practical training. If we're tracking, they wouldn't be handling a dog as such, but they can certainly follow up and observe the tracks. Or if they wish to stay back at the camp and read a book, absolutely fine. Equally, resources permitting, meaning transportation, because we've got vehicles there, but they might be tied up on the course, but permitting if there was, let's say 3 or 4 companions who wanted to do something different for the day, we'll arrange for a bit of wildlife photography for them, take them out. There's a beautiful dam close to us. There's a lot of history there as well, that's worth exploring and looking at. The nearest shopping, if people fancy going shopping, is a good 4-hour, I'm going to say 3-hour drive, maybe. Most of it dirt track. So that'll be 3 hours there and 3 hours back. So it's a day. But, we haven't ruled it out. So if people wanted to go, when I say shopping, it's not, it's not like walking around Marks and Spencer's, but it's something different to see. It's a major town. I won't try and pronounce the name of that town because I can't. But there's if they wanted to go shopping again, we will need to do a replan run for supplies mid-course anyway. So if people wanted to jump who weren't on the course for the day and go and do something different, they're more than welcome. I did it one day. I'd advise not to sit on the back of the pickup because I was green by the time I got to the other end, and I was very close to throwing up. Yeah. But I didn't. So, it's a bumpy, dirty track. So, if you sat on the back, it's a different story, but sat inside the vehicle. So yeah, we'll make sure they're catered for. Yeah. That saying, where the camp is, it's idyllic. If you're into sort of reading books or just sat there and watching the day go past, it would be amazing. We intend to do what we call in this country barbecues, but they call them braais. I experienced 2. And wow, yeah, it was fantastic. For meat lovers, it's fantastic. It wouldn't be for non-meat lovers, but I'm sure we'll think of something. But there's a nice social event to that. So I see the evenings, obviously finishing the course up, looking after the dogs. On that element, I am planning on, the people being involved with the care of the dogs, not leaving them to the actual dog handlers. So we'll be walking them in the morning, inspection, grooming, feeding them, all that sort of good stuff as well. So the welfare of the dogs. But yeah, have an evening once all that's done and people are showered, and we'll have dinner as a group. So it's quite a social thing. We want to have a couple of beers and sit outside and talk about the day's training. Equally, I've insisted that the local Zimbabwean sort of instructors that are working with us, they won't go off and eat somewhere different. They'll be eating with us, because it's good to talk to them and understand you hear more from people in a more social environment, I find.
Absolutely. I mean, anyone who's coming along onto this course as a companion to somebody attending the course, I found when I was in Africa, there wasn't a moment that I was bored. There aren't the distractions that we have here in Britain, admittedly, but you're so close to nature that there's a wholeness, there's a peacefulness that comes with being there. So holistically, it's beneficial from many perspectives for someone who's attending, not just supporting their companion who'd be attending the course. Just being in the environment, it's an experience of a lifetime. And I hear what you're saying about the opportunity to go and visit one of the local towns and do a little bit of shopping, and that's not Marks and Spencer's. But equally, there's a lot of locally produced crafts available in these towns, and there's an opportunity there to purchase keepsakes to take back with them back home to remind them of their time there in Zimbabwe. For people who are attending, Simon, is it possible, if they wanted to extend their trip after the course and maybe explore Zimbabwe a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually, in the back of my mind, planning to do something similar myself. So the whole event is 16 days. So it'll start people fly in on the Saturday. And then 16 days later, we would be leaving Sebakwe, Mahamara on the Sunday morning, early hours, to get people back to Harare by Sunday afternoon, evening for flights out. If people wanted to stay, we will drop them in Harare where they wish, whether that be a hotel or back at the airport. Personally, I'm thinking of maybe flying on just for a couple of nights to Victoria Falls.
Wow.
Yeah, why not while I'm there? And a connecting flight is not expensive. And then flying home either from there or maybe back to Harare and home from there. So, yeah, I was disappointed I couldn't do it last time, but I was on a tight schedule. So, yeah, why not? If you've got the time, and you get time off from work and life commitments, there's no reason. Yeah, we'll drop people back at Harare and they could extend their trip. And there's no reason they couldn't fly to another African country if they chose to.
Yes.
Harare's, that airport will connect you to other airports, and the Africa's your oyster, I guess, or the world's your oyster. Africa's your oyster. There you go.
Yeah, I know from talking to many people who visited Africa, they also feel the same way that I do, and that I think that you do, about it being a very special set of countries. And once you've been there, you want more of it, and you want to explore more. And many people don't even want to come back. It's such a wonderful place. So it's good to hear that if they wanted to, at the end of the course, then they can move on and perhaps add to their itinerary.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose just jumping in there. I mean, well, let's not lose. I mean, this all sounds wonderful, and it is wonderful. And myself and the rest of the team will make sure it's wonderful and people have a good, positive experience of it. There's an element of this is bringing income in to help both Peter and Sean's outfits, bringing in creating awareness because this particular area in Zimbabwe isn't particularly well known. They do have a real problem with wildlife being hunted or poached, whatever you want to call it. It's disappearing fast. And there's a group of people there that are trying to do something about it with little or no resources and funding. So I'm kind of hoping that once these people, let's call them our people, have been there and they've visited, they're going to come home and want to become ambassadors, if you like, and try and get the next group of people there, or maybe arrange fundraising campaigns to help them, or come home and do some sort of campaign to get equipment or kit out there, because they'll see it with their own eyes. A lot of things are needed, and the guys and girls are kind of just making do. So yeah, there's a real side to this as well that I'm hoping is going to be a spin-off from it.
Yeah, I mean, I recently saw a video that you produced of your trip out to Zimbabwe, and at the start of the video, you're in a 4x4 vehicle going along a dirt track, and there's an abundance of wildlife around you. And then a little while later, I presume when you're closer to Sebakwe, you're talking to one of the guides, and he explains that just in a short period of, say, 15 years or so, there was once an abundance of wildlife there, and now there isn't. And you pan the camera around, and there's nothing in comparison to when you started off your journey. And that really moved me when I saw that, to see that the impact of poaching is very real. Sure, it's a tracking course, and people are learning how to track poachers, but actually we're dealing with a very serious subject here that's having a huge impact on the wildlife in the area. So people attending the course, I don't doubt they're going to be moved equally when they see exactly what's going on and the benefits of actually being a part of stopping that happening and repopulating the area with its natural wildlife.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, guys, you see very little wildlife. You've got to go out and look for it. So the filming you saw there, we've gone out of our way to find it.
Wow.
They're there, but you've got to. I mean, I was with professional scouts, and I mean, you're literally tracking, and we will do this. It is a kind of fun and exciting thing to do, to track the wildlife and take pictures of them, which is what was the only thing that people should be doing when tracking wildlife. And that's exciting in itself. But what I did find is when they see you, they initially freeze and try and make themselves look like a rock or a tree or something. And then when they realise that we've seen them, they bolt. Now I've spent a number of years on and off in Kenya in a very secure conservancy called Lewa. The animals would just walk past you. Herds of giraffes or elephants or rhino, because they weren't hunted, and so they weren't scared. These guys know that people are after them, so they bolt. So another part of this. Sorry, I keep forgetting things and then thinking, another bit, because there's so much to this. Of this former hunting lodge, if we can get it up and running again as a camp for not just what I've got in mind, but further down the line, it could be for off-roading or wildlife adventures or education. There's so many aspects to it. A big part of this is drilling a borehole and flooding the area. There used to be a dam, a lake in front of this lodge. The water's been cut off, so it's gone. So if we can get this borehole there, so what I do want to do is try and raise funds to do that. And it's not massive money. I'm told it's about $4,000, so it's possible. And then flood that area. And if they flood it, then the animals will come in because there's water there. There'll be habitat, because the water will help with the habitation. The animals come in. That means it's a smaller area to secure. So then the scouts and the rangers can secure that. And then, from what I'm told, animals here on the jungle drum, this is it's safe here. There's water. There's food. Everyone come here. So yeah, and I've spoken in length to numerous people about this, thinking, am I crazy, or is this going to work? And they're like, no, it will happen. If we can do all this, it will happen.
Yeah, I mean, what a worthwhile thing to do. I think anyone seeing that would really want to be a part of it. It sounds fantastic, Simon. Now, if somebody wanted to attend this course and to join you out in Zimbabwe, how do they get hold of you?
What I'd like people to do is to attend a Teams briefing that we're hosting on December the 18th at 4 p.m. 1600 UK time, GMT. So they'd need to send me an email or reach out to me on social media, whatever, and to say that they're interested. So when I say interested, you can attend this Teams briefing if you're just interested. It doesn't mean you're committed to come out on this first tracking course and Bushcamp experience. if you're just interested in what we're doing, please jump onto that Teams briefing. On that Teams briefing, obviously I'm on it. There's Sean from the Sebakwe Anti-Poaching Conservation Group. There's Peter from the Canine Anti-Poaching Foundation Trust. There's Ashton, I've spoken about, who's a wildlife expert, conservation expert. Hopefully, Petrus, if they can release him from operational, work that he's involved with, who's our expert scout and visual tracker. All these people will be on this briefing, so the medic will be there as well. So I know people will possibly have concerns about our, in the case of emergency, we have covered all that. And to be honest, it was one of the first things I said. If we're going to make this work, then we've got to make sure there's medical support and equipment and backup here. In the unlikely event that it's needed, we've got everything in place. So. Yeah. Hopefully that can put people's mind at ease. And maybe people will have questions like, I don't know, perhaps they think they're not suitable. And I can maybe put that at ease, and answer those questions. So, yeah, they if they can attend that Teams briefing, that'd be fantastic. And it'll be a very informal chat like we're chatting now, and if people are free to ask questions. I guess, I don't know, hopefully we can record it, and then if somebody wants to see it at a later date, they can. Yeah. And then we go from there. So I hate to talk about money, but while we're on here, it's been costed at £3,500. That's the course, that's accommodation, that's food, that's transportation, that's the medical support, that's all these fantastic trainers, instructors, advisors from all their various backgrounds. I think that's fantastic value for money.
Yes.
And if somebody wanted to bring a companion with them, so that companion would be sharing the same lodge. If they wanted separate beds, we can arrange that. That's not a problem. But they'd be sharing the same lodge. It's an additional £850 to bring that person, which is basically at cost. So there's no profit there, if you like. It's covering the costs of that. So if you added those two together, if there's two people coming, that's I think that's quite a good deal.
That is superb value for money.
Yeah, so,
when you think about the environment that everyone's in, it's actually unique. This isn't something you're going to find in a holiday brochure. And I understand it's not a holiday, it's a training course, but it's a very, very unique training course. It's a very, very unique experience. It's something that most people will never have had the opportunity to do before in their life, and will never have the opportunity to do again outside of these courses that you're running. So I think that's superb value for money.
The word training course, I'm not sure. It is if that's what somebody wants, but equally if somebody wants more of an experience of it, that'll be there. What I don't want it's not a military training camp, where it's going to be very, it'll be professional, but it'll be relaxed. And it is a holiday, it's a different sort of holiday.
Yeah.
But it's what, if somebody was sort of 4 or 5 days into it, bearing in mind we are out in the bush, if they said, actually, Simon, I'm finding the trekking a little bit too physical for me, we'll adapt it. And if they want a day off from it, that's fine. They probably wouldn't be able to, if they wanted the certificate at the end of it and go through it, and there would be an endpoint assessment. So somebody who's serious about it, they'd need to tick the boxes and jump through hoops. And if somebody wasn't so serious about it and just wanted experience, that's absolutely fine. We'll tailor it to whatever you want.
Simon,
so
that
if you
sounds
are
fantastic.
Serious, we'll make it serious.
That sounds fantastic,
if you're
Simon.
not, we'll make it fun.
That sounds really good, Simon. So the team's meeting, when is that again?
It's Monday, December the 18th at 4 p.m. UK time.
Brilliant. And if people want to reach out to you, they can do, of course, on your website, which is simonmallin.com. That's Simon, MALLIN.com. And there's a contact us page at the bottom, so people can reach out to you and send you a message, and that'll go straight to Simon so he can answer any questions, comments or queries that you might have on that. Simon, that's just brilliant, and thank you for giving us your time on this podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to add for the listeners out there?
No, I don't think so. I think between the two of us, we've covered all angles. Can you think of anything?
No, I can't. I think what we've done there is actually we've covered a lot of information, tremendous amount of content there, which is great, and I think that'll answer a lot of the questions or queries that people might have. We will be interviewing other members of the team shortly to gain their perspective. They live and work in Zimbabwe permanently, so really feel the impact on their home country from poaching, and also really understand the value of the work that you're doing out there. That's all for now for this podcast. Join us again for our next instalment as we speak to some of the other team members from this exciting project.